The Egyptian cavalry at Merawi received their orders on the 25th of December, and the British officers hurried from their Christmas dinners to prepare for their long march across the bend of the Nile to Berber. Of the 8 squadrons, 3 were pushed on to join Lewis's force at the position which will hereinafter be called the Atbara encampment, or more familiarly, the Atbara. 3 swelled the gathering forces at Berber, and 2 remained for the present in the Dongola province, looking anxiously out towards Gakdul Wells and Metemma. The War Office, who had been nervous about the situation in the Sudan since the hasty occupation of Berber, and who had a very lively recollection of the events of 1884 and 1885, lost no time in the dispatch of British troops, and the speed with which a force, so suddenly called for, was concentrated, shows the capacity for energy which may on occasion be developed even by our disjointed military organisation. The first battalions of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment, of the Lincoln Regiment, and of the Cameron Highlanders were formed into a brigade and moved from Cairo into the Sudan. The first battalion of the Seaforth Highlanders was brought from Malta to Egypt, and held in immediate readiness to reinforce the troops at the front. Other battalions were sent to take the places of those moved south, so that the army of occupation was not diminished. The officer selected for the command of the British brigade was a man of high character and ability. General Gatacre had already led a brigade in the Chitral expedition, and serving under Sir Robert Lowe and Sir Bindon Blood, had gained so good a reputation that after the storming of the Malakand Pass and the subsequent action in the plain of Kar, it was thought desirable to transpose his brigade with that of General Kinloch, and send Gatacre forward to Chitral. From the mountains of the northwest frontier the general was ordered to Bombay, and in a stubborn struggle with the bubonic plague, which was then at its height, he turned his attention from camps of war to camps of segregation. He left India, leaving behind him golden opinions, just before the outbreak of the great frontier rising, and was appointed to a brigade at Aldershot. Thence we now find him hurried to the Sudan, a spare, middle-sized man, of great physical strength and energy, of marked capacity and unquestioned courage, but disturbed by a restless irritation, to which even the most inordinate activity afforded little relief, and which often left him the exhausted victim of his own vitality. By the end of January a powerful force lay encamped along the river from Abu Hamed to the Atbara. Meanwhile the Dervishes made no forward movement. Their army was collected at Kerreri. Supplies were plentiful. All preparations had been made. Yet they tarried. The burning question of the command had arisen. A dispute that was never settled ensued. When the whole army was regularly assembled, the Khalifa announced publicly that he would lead the faithful in person, but at the same time he arranged privately that many Emirs and notables should beg him not to expose his sacred person. After proper solicitation, therefore, he yielded to their appeals. Then he looked round for a subordinate. The Khalifa Ali Wad Helu presented himself. In the Sudan every advantage and honour accrues to the possessor of an army, and the rival chief saw a chance of regaining his lost power. This consideration was not, however, lost upon Abdullah. He accepted the offer with apparent delight, but he professed himself unable to spare any rifles for the army which Ali Wad Helu aspired to lead. "Alas!" he cried, "there are none, but that will make no difference to so famous a warrior." Ali Wad Helu, however, considered that it would make a great deal of difference, and declined the command. Osman Sheikh ed Din offered to lead the army, if he might arm the riverain tribes and use them as auxiliaries to swell his force. This roused the disapproval of Yakub. Such a policy, he declared, was fatal. The riverain tribes were traitors, dogs, worthy only of being destroyed, and he enlarged upon the more refined methods by which his policy might be carried out. The squabble continued, until at last the Khalifa, despairing of any agreement, decided merely to reinforce Mahmud, and accordingly ordered the Emir Yunis to march to Metemma with about 5,000 men. But it was then discovered that Mahmud hated Yunis and would have none of him. At this the Khalifa broke up his camp, and the Dervish army marched back for a second time, in vexation and disgust, to the city. It seemed to those who were acquainted with the Dervish movements that all offensive operations on their part had been definitely abandoned. Even in the intelligence department it was believed that the break-up of the Kerreri camp was the end of the Khalifa's determination to move north. There would be a hot and uneventful summer, and with the flood Nile the expedition would begin its final advance. The news which was received on the 15th of February came as a great and pleasant surprise. Mahmud was crossing the Nile and proposed to advance on Berber without reinforcements of any kind. The Sirdar, highly satisfied at this astounding piece of good fortune, immediately began to mass his force nearer the confluence. On the 21st the British at Abu Dis were instructed to hold themselves in readiness. The Seaforths began their journey from Cairo, and the various battalions of the Egyptian army pressed forward towards Berber and Atbara fort. On the 25th, Mahmud being reported as having crossed to the right bank, the general concentration was ordered. End of chapter 10.